between 1 and 10. Any number between 1 and 10. Have your number? All right, now what I want you to do, I want you to multiply that number by 2. Okay? Just multiply your number by 2. Now, I want you to add 8 to that number. Add 8 to that number. All right, with your new number, I want you to divide by 2. Divide that number by 2. Okay, last step, last math part. I want you to subtract your original number. Okay? Subtract your original number. All right, everybody now you have a number in mind. Now I want you to think about the alphabet. 1 meaning A, 2 being B, 3 being C, and so forth. So I want you to take your number that you found and I want you to find which letter corresponds to your number. Okay, everybody have the letter? Okay, good. All right, I want you now to just quickly think of a country that begins with that letter. All right, just a country that begins with that letter. Now I'm going to ask you to become a little bit hard because you need to kind of spell that country. And I want you to look at the very last letter in the spelling of that country, that last letter. I want you to think of an animal that begins with that letter. Okay, just think of an animal that begins with that letter. Now again, I'm going to ask you to spell, and I want you to think about how that animal name is spelled, and I want you to come to the very last letter of the animal. All right, and I want you to just think of a color that begins with that letter. Okay? Oh wait. No, that's not right. I mean, there are no orange kangaroos in Denmark. Rationalize it. And while the mathematical secret of that little game is not too difficult to figure out, there are some mysteries we just can't explain. Some things we just can't understand. And that brings us to our gospel reading this morning. The story of a wedding in Cana. Now John begins his story by telling us that it is the 3rd day. And these words are really important because they are symbolic of God's saving work in the person of Jesus Christ. You see, the 3rd day means completion. And yes, the 3rd day points to the empty tomb. But even though the cross is a little ways off, it is the 3rd day. And Mary, Jesus' mother, as well as Jesus himself and the disciples, they are all invited to this wedding. And while they're there, Mary walks up to Jesus and says, "They ran out of wine." But first, Jesus dismisses it. What does that have to do with you or with me? But Mary believes that it is Jesus' time. That this is an opportunity for Jesus to reveal God's glory. So she turns to the stewards and she says, "Do whatever he tells you." Now standing there are these 6 stone jars that are for the purification rites. Each one holds 20 to 30 gallons. And Jesus tells the stewards, "Fill these stone jars with water." Now, at some point, Jesus turns this water into wine. And yet, that really seems explain it. They just believe it, that God was there, that God had broken into our world in the person of Jesus Christ, in Jesus' presence, right then, with great abundance. It is the third day. And I don't believe that it is a coincidence that for John, the first of Jesus' signs was this epiphany of abundance. 6 jugs of water filled with 20 to 30 gallons each. That is a whole lot of party. And this is the framework of God's presence, the framework of this new creation that is defined by surprise and by hospitality and by abundance. And this abundance is a joyous foretaste of the feast to come, a feast that we can taste now. That's what happens at this table. When we come to this feast and taste that bread and that wine, we are celebrating the abundance of God's love through Jesus Christ. And we willingly remember that Jesus willingly gave his life for ours. And in that small piece of bread, and in that small cup of wine, we are invited to see the whole life of Jesus given for us. Yet even more, we are invited to be changed by it, to have our eyes opened to the presence of God, to find love and forgiveness and healing and joy abundantly. That's what happens when we experience this mysterious, unexplained presence of Jesus. And it is a mystery, a promise that we are invited to believe like the disciples, believe like Mary, that Jesus is present to us in the waters of baptism, in the bread and wine of the Lord's Supper, and even in the depths of our very hearts, offering us new and abundant lives now. It is the third day. So when you come to this table, you are encountering Jesus in this holy mystery. And I want you to remember, you don't have to explain it. You don't have to understand it. You are invited just to believe it. As you come to this table, let God's love surprise you with a fullness in your heart, knowing that you are loved just as you are. As you come to this table, as Diane Jacobson says, imagine this bread and wine opening your eyes to the inbreaking of God's kingdom come. Imagine this meal opening you to the reality that the world is a place of surprise because God is present in it. As you come to this table, remember that while there are no orange kangaroos in Denmark, there is a God who is greater than anything we can imagine, who became one of us in order to save us, to walk with us, to give us courage and strength, to free us from our pain, and to call us from that tomb. This is a great mystery of our faith that marks our lives, and it changes us. Water into wine. And not just any wine, but the best wine, inviting us to live life abundantly. So today and every day, let's believe like Mary. Believe like the disciples that Jesus is present right here, right now. It is third day.